"Listen to me," said the demon, as he placed his hand upon my head. "There's a spot upon this accursed earth which thou hast never yet beheld, and if by any chance thou hast beheld it, it must have been in one of those vigorous dreams which come like the moon upon the brain of the sleeper who hath lain down to sleep among the forbidden sunbeams. Among the sunbeams, I say, which slide from off the solemn columns of the melancholy temples in the wilderness. The region of which I speak is a dreary region in Libya, by the borders of the river Zeri, and there is no quiet there, nor silence. The waters of the river have a saffron and sickly hue. They flow not onwards to the sea, but palpitate forever and ever beneath the red eye of the sun with a tumultuous and convulsive motion. For many miles on either side of the river's oozy bed is a pale desert of gigantic water lilies. They sigh one unto the other in that solitude, and stretch towards the heaven their long ghastly necks, and nod to and fro their everlasting heads. And there is an indistinct murmur which cometh out from among them like the rushing of subterranean water, and they sigh one unto the other. But there is a boundary to their realm, the boundary of the dark, horrible, lofty forest. There, like the waves about the Hebrides, the low underwood is agitated continually, but there is no wind throughout the heaven, and the tall primeval trees rock eternally hither and thither with a crashing and mighty sound. And from their high summits one by one drop everlasting dews. At the roots strange poisonous flowers lie writhing in perturbed slumber. And overhead, with a rustling and loud noise, the gray clouds rush westwardly forever, until they roll, a cataract over the fiery wall of the horizon. But there is no wind throughout the heaven, and by the shores of the river Zeri there is neither quiet nor silence. It was night, and the rain fell, and falling it was rain, but having fallen it was blood. And I stood in the morass among the tall lilies, and the rain fell upon my head, and the lilies sighed one unto the other, and the solemnity of their desolation. And all at once the moon arose through the thin ghastly mist, and was crimson in color. And mine eyes fell upon a huge gray rock, which stood by the shore of the river, and was litten by the light of the moon. And the rock was gray and ghastly and tall. The rock was gray. Upon its front were characters engraven in the stone. I walked through the morass of water lilies until I came close unto the shore, that I might read the characters upon the stone. But I could not decipher the characters. I was going back into the morass, when the moon shone with a fuller red, and I turned and looked again upon the rock, and upon the characters, and the characters were desolation. And I looked upwards, and there stood a man upon the summit of the rock, and I hid myself among the water lilies, that I might discover the actions of the man. And the man was tall and stately in form, and was wrapped up from his shoulders to his feet in the toga of old Rome. The outlines of his figure were indistinct, but his features were the features of deity. For the mantle of the night, of the mist, and of the moon, and of the dew had left uncovered the features of his face, and his brow was lofty with thought, and his eye wild with care, and in the few furrows upon his cheek I read the fables of sorrow and weariness and disgust with mankind and a longing after solitude. And the moon shone upon his face, and upon the features of his face, and oh, they were more beautiful than the airy dreams which hovered over the souls of the daughters of Delos. And the man sat down upon the rock, and leaned his head upon his hand, and looked out upon the desolation. He looked down into the low, unquiet shrubbery, and up into the tall, primeval trees, and up higher at the rustling heaven, and into the crimson moon. And I lay close within shelter of the lilies, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. And the man turned his attention from the heaven, and looked upon the dreary river of Zeri, and upon the yellow ghastly waters, and upon the pale legions of the water lilies. And the man listened to the sighs of the water lilies, and the murmur that came up from among them. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man, and the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I went down into the recesses of the morass, and waited afar and among the wilderness of the lilies, and called unto the hippopotami, which dwelt among the fens and the recesses of the morass, and the hippopotami heard my call, and came with the behemoth unto the foot of the rock, and roared loudly and fearfully beneath the moon. I lay close within my covert, and I observed the actions of the man, and the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I cursed the elements with the curse of tumult. A frightful tempest gathered in the heaven, where before there had been no wind. And the heaven became livid with the violence of the tempest, and the rain beat upon the head of the man, and the floods of the river came down, and the river was tormented in foam. And the water lilies shrieked within their beds, and the river and the forest crumbled before the wind, and the thunder rolled, and the lightning fell, and the rock rocketed to its foundation. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I grew angry and cursed with the curse of silence the river, and the lilies, and the wind, and the forest, and the heavens, and the thunder, and the sighs of the water lilies. And they became accursed, and were still. The moon ceased to totter in its pathway up the heaven, and the thunder died away, the lightning did not flash, the clouds hung motionless, the waters sunk to their level and remained, the trees ceased to rock, and the water lilies sighed no more, and the murmur was heard no longer from upon them, nor any shadow of sound throughout the vast illimitable desert. I look upon the characters of the rock, and they were changed, and the characters were silence. And mine eyes fell upon the countenance of the man, and his countenance was wan with terror. And hurriedly he raised his head from his hand, and stood forth upon the rock, and silent, and listened. But there was no voice throughout the vast, illimitable desert, and the characters upon the rock were silence. And the man shuddered, and his face turned away, and fled afar off, and I beheld them